Hey, welcome to Command HQ. I am Brock, and I am just fixing my microphone here so it's close to my face, as well as switching the view here because I get a little bit of a better screen port using this particular view. Okay, so we kind of have a packed mini show here ready to go. I have a couple of the petitions with the challenges from these voters in Maine. I have some analysis by the radical left on CNN. And I have some other interesting little stories ready to go here. So let's get to it with this petition that I have up on screen, and you can see it pretty clearly. Now, in Maine, there's a statute whereby the Secretary of State has the legal ability to review these challenges. And this is 21A MRS 337. If you look actually into this, review and challenge of petitions. Section 1, review. When presented with a primary petition, the Secretary of State shall review it, and if the petition contains the required number of certified names and is properly completed, shall accept and file it. There's a challenge portion here, which is Section 2. The procedure for challenging the validity of a primary petition or of names upon a petition is as follows. And then it goes into all the details, subsections here, A, B, C, and D. So I think the key here is that if there's a challenge, the Secretary of State holds a hearing within 7 days. And any decision can be appealed to the superior courts, the trial court in Maine. Now, since the Secretary of State has gone ahead and ruled that President Trump is disqualified from being on the ballot in Maine under the 14th Amendment, the Section 3, the Insurrection Clause, we have Trump's attorneys likely, or the GOP attorneys in Maine likely appealing this directly to the Superior Court. Now, you could go through this decision, and I frankly have not read it. Okay, so as an argument, the Secretary of State is saying that Trump is, quote, unqualified. And I do have a little bit of a mini research piece on the Secretary of State in Maine. Let me just bring that up. So, Shenna Bellows. Here, let me see if we can see this on the stream. Sort of. Let's zoom out. There we go. Okay, so another one of these, relatively young women, Secretary of States. Oh, surprising, she's a Democrat. And you never hear about these Secretary of States until something happens with an election, and in this case, and they're, Wikipedia is asking for money while they censor you and attack you. Um, until they take, a major candidate off the ballot, so they literally do nothing except for have their henchmen do their dirty work for them. She probably personally reviewed the challenges and then dispatched her minions, her assistants, out to, uh, you know, go to this hearing, defend her decision. She was probably there personally, but still at the same time, she really wanted to make sure that she made this into a huge public relations issue. Um, surprising that Bellows is pro-choice, of course. Okay, yeah, no one cares. Oh, look at it. So, I mean, this is a Wikipedia. You never know if all this information is complete or true. But she's a childless Secretary of State, just like Jenna Griswold in Colorado. What's with these childless women? Destroying society, prohibiting candidates. What gives her the power to take the leading Republican candidate off the ballot for more than half the country? These people are out of their mind. They are high on power. I don't know, what she's thinking. The arrogance that goes into these decisions. It's one thing to disagree and not like or want to vote or want to put Trump on the ballot, but it is an entirely different thing when you are effectively removing constitutional rights from millions of voters throughout this country. And I really hope the appeal of the Colorado decision to the U.S. Supreme Court, I really hope the Supreme Court nails these Secretary of States. I mean, just really criticizes them in the decision that they lay down. There's been a lot of conspiracy theories I've read on Twitter. Unfortunately, I don't have them up, where these nanny mother liberals want to talk shit like, oh yeah, it would be hilarious if one of these Supreme Court justices appointed by Trump were to, keep Trump off these ballots. Now, no one in their right mind actually sees that. Even Bill Barr, one of the most inept, clearly corrupt attorney generals in the history of this country, who did nothing and laughed at Trump as Trump had clear evidence of voter fraud, actually went on national TV, went on Fox News, humiliated Trump after Trump appointed him again as an attorney general. I think he served before in a Bush cabinet. They're like double agents, you can never trust them. And this country learned a lot, even just through watching all of that. But anyways, back to the task here with these childless Secretary of States. I don't know what kind of arrogance or megalomania that this woman is under, but talk about being humble. Let's humbly do my job. Let's go into work every day. Let's dot the I's, let's cross the T's, let's trust other people, stuff like that. And then here she comes in and wants to take away your rights. So anyways, okay, let's go back to this decision. Oh yeah, unqualified. 14th Amendment. They are coordinating this, and I hope that a lot of people are doing FOIA requests to look at some of this coordination, because there's clearly people quarterbacking this. We were talking about Kristen Settlemeyer in Georgia, who spent a lot of time in New York and knows that system really well. I think she's even licensed in New York. She's an attorney. She works out of the Attorney General's office in Georgia. And she's been, dealing with blocking all of the open data requests coming in and working to undermine the public, and then mocking the public by sending wrong records, by telling them that they need to hire attorneys at thousands of dollars to pay for a retainer, coming up with incorrect printing fees of $350 just to do basic stuff that could be sent in a PDF. They got all kinds of hacks and tricks to deal with the public, and it's sickening. It's disturbing. Okay, just sifting through. Oh, here we go. Oh, wow. So the other thing here is the Secretary of State, Maine Ballot, is unilaterally claiming, without any findings at all, that Trump made false claims regarding the 2020 election. Are you kidding me? How is that? I mean, are you... It really does beg the question, if Maine Ballot is going to do this to Trump, is she going to do this to every single presidential candidate that's on a Maine ballot? She's going to go through their entire history of public statements and look at every single public statement and say, this is true, this is true, this is not true. This is Ministry of Truth level disinformation. And it's frustrating because, everybody makes misstatements. And there's many people in this country, including myself, who don't believe that Trump is making false claims, just generally speaking. I mean, I'm sure you could pick out little things here or there, but you can do the same thing to me. You can do the same thing to anyone. You can just pick and choose. People make misstatements. And then all of the, it's also not accounting for all this evidence, for example, that came out with the, what was it, the Mules documentary? Hold on. It's 2000 Mules documentary by Dinesh D'Souza, that showed that they were stuffing ballots in places like Georgia, and they had used kind of that same forensic cell phone technology to trace all these mules that they had used to track down J6ers. And, we didn't have that evidence when Trump made the claims I'm assuming that they're referring to. Plus, more importantly, as you can tell, the Constitution has no provision whatsoever for, quote, false claims about a previous election. More bullshit. Okay, Mr. Trump engaged in an insurrection against the United States such that he is not qualified to hold office. What? Am I living on a different planet here? Again, Trump made a speech on January 6th. Was it stupid, I think, for many of those people to show up? Yeah. Did it look like a setup? Yep. Would I have showed up? No. Have I made stupid decisions in my life that, although legal, are maybe in hindsight something that I could have done differently? Yep. Okay, so this is a pretty lengthy decision for something pretty simple. Yep. Okay, so now they're talking about the insurrection clause, section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Boop. Someone should just do the poop emoji on this whole decision. Because that's exactly what it is. It's just a piece of shit. You know, and so Jenna Griswold apparently now has put Trump back on the ballot in Colorado. Why put the country through that? Plus, what is their strategy? To exhaust and beleaguer half this country? The strategy is to wear Donald Trump's wallet down, paying for attorneys, wear the wallets down at the GOP, who potentially is also coming up with some of the money to pay for attorneys to defend against some of this shenanigan crap. Okay, so just reading through it. Okay, so now they're going into why an oath of office for the presidency somehow also applies, even though it doesn't. It's not a condition to become president that there's any, noticeable connection to this, quote, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. I mean, if that were the case, I think 75% of Democrats would immediately get booted from office. Now, I mean, this is where the whole January 6th situation comes into full view. I think people were confused for a long time, and now less and less people are confused about why the DOJ and why the Biden administration has been so harsh against January 6th defendants, or really anyone who exposes some of the lack of security, shall we say, with respect to January 6th. Because they had this whole thing set up. They wanted to use this and coordinate in a way that they were going to try and block President Trump from all these ballots. And it's not even really brilliant. It's really actually very average IQ kind of. It's not even smart. Because you could kind of see this coming, but the layman who may not know a lot about election related law or Secretary of State stuff, and we're kind of learning as we go here. It's just like, okay, so you're going to use the 14th Amendment, which was built for the Civil War, and it was actually A, never used, and then B, it was ratified as a way to stabilize government and keep basically Jefferson Davis, who did engage in an insurrection against the country, away from the presidency. Like literally one person. And even some of the Confederate military officers still served in Congress after the war. There was a lot of forgiveness. Okay. And people had honor. We don't have the same sort of honor today. And it's a different situation too, because as you see, we have all these childless secretaries of state running these show trials, these sham proceedings to keep Trump off the ballot. And I don't think anyone has seen anything quite like this. Now, someone like me who's basically been, for someone who's not super wealthy or anything, basically, like if you scaled it down to someone like me, like I have been through something similar. But, if you scale it way up to someone like President Trump, yeah, it's like 1,000 times bigger, right? Probably even more than 1,000 times. But, they will do anything and everything to overwhelm you, to lie about you, to falsify and fabricate evidence, to misrepresent your statements, to literally Photoshop your images and put them out to the national media. They will ruin your family. They will try and terrorize you. They'll try and raid your house. Like all that stuff I have experienced in one way or another, even though I'm a pacifist. And some of this does on a very micro level trigger some of that PTSD with me. And that's why this stuff makes me so angry and frustrated, because no one's perfect. And you're going to hold someone off a ballot because they gave a speech on January 6th. And even worse, you're going to terrorize all these J6 defendants to keep Trump off a ballot, to use as an excuse in order to raise the 14th Amendment and this insurrection clause, Section 3. It's evil. That's what it is. Just checking comments here. Okay, so I'm seeing a few people on Rumble here. Please live chat if you want, so we can zero in on particular sections here, but let me continue to go through this. Try and give less of my own commentary. I keep on getting sidetracked. All right. 23. Keep on referring to Professor Maglioka, who is defining what an insurrection is. So they're not depending on the Constitution and the 14th Amendment to identify what an insurrection is. They're relying on this professor, who's probably being paid by the Secretary of State. So they're kind of like hoisting him up as an expert witness almost. Okay, so they're saying that Trump doesn't offer an alternate expert to challenge the professor's definition of what an insurrection is. Okay, well, so that specifically, and they're probably misquoting one of the attorneys for Trump here. Specifically, Mr. Trump's claim that an insurrection must be, quote, violent enough, potent enough, long enough, and organized enough to be considered a significant step on the way to rebellion. An insurrection is that's not even really the definition of an insurrection. It's trying to take over the executive branch or any branch of government through violence. Okay, so I guess Maine gets to define what an insurrection is. Great. And they get to choose whether or not President Trump actually engaged in one. This is such a dangerous precedent, too, because now they can use this against anyone that they don't like. Oh, no, they're going to say the tweets were. Oh, here we go, right here. Well, let me highlight here, but if you can see my cursor, yep, can. Mr. Trump simultaneously implored his supporters to, quote, save America and fight on. Those are tweets. Who knows? I don't have them in front of me. Who knows? What they were referring to. They're tweets. So now, if you tweet something out and there's some important political event going on, you can be accused of an insurrection. Someone who is constantly accused of crimes ranging from A through Z for simply posting lawful First Amendment exercise on the internet. I mean, I know this well. This is a very dangerous precedent. So, and the other thing is these childless Secretary of States, like Bellows, like Jenna Griswold, they believe and they think they can get away with classifying anything as violence. So to them, challenging them, arguing with them is violence. Oh, it's really tragic too, because I remember when this was going on, and I had commented that, as much as I agreed with President Trump about voter fraud, I just had a feeling, because I was watching Wisconsin, I was watching Michigan, as I explained in a couple earlier streams, and it was just very fishy. The vote count went vertical at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when no one else was watching as these votes were being tallied in central facilities. I just didn't really feel confident about it. You look inside of yourself and you look for this sort of spiritual discernment. And I wasn't seeing that whatever was being presented by the media, and of course I have zero trust of the media, was actually factually correct. So I was very questioning of what was going on, but at the same time, I felt like it was kind of foolish to bring thousands of people to the edge of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, because I thought there was something else that was going to trigger and set these people up. And it was a better use of time to allow people like Ted Cruz to challenge the electors that day. And remember, that never happened because of the quote, riot on January 6th. I don't even know if it was a riot. I think maybe outside of the building, maybe there was some rioting going on. But inside the building, you just saw people walk through. And Ted Cruz and others weren't given that chance to argue the validity of the certification of the state ballots because of January 6th. And that was the real tragedy, because that could have at least delayed the certification from a state's perspective in some of these areas, including Wisconsin, until such point that there were better protections in place to investigate what actually happened. And I think that would have been a much smarter way to handle this whole situation. And I do like that Trump took a dump on Biden and Obama by not going to the inauguration and not participating in their sham. And I love that he's criticizing Obama and Biden. Love it. Because I think it needs to happen. This tradition of not criticizing your predecessor or your successor, when these people are starting wars around the world and engaging in all kinds of evil, it finally came to an end, and that's fantastic. But I do not like the fact that we are really on the verge of a civil war in this country, and I'm being very serious. And I'm hearing that from the South. I'm hearing it from around here. Everyone kind of feels something is really they can feel it, okay? And I'm seeing it on the internet as well. And God forbid, of course, anything like that ever happens. And again, I am advocating for complete peace. And I'm a pacifist myself. Okay, so if we continue to go through this. Okay, so because President Trump implored his supporters to, quote, fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. So we're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania Avenue. Like, this is hilarious how Trump gets sidetracked just like me. Yeah, I love Pennsylvania Avenue. And we're going to the Capitol and we're going to try and we're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take a country back. See, this is comical. Like, why would anybody take that seriously? Honestly, I'm laughing just reading this. That, those are the best of times when you would wake up and you would read a Trump tweet and Trump would say something like this. And see, the way that I understand or decipher this, it's comedy to me. It's hilarious. It's supposed to be humorous. And I think people take this way too seriously. And that's another problem in this country. People take things way too seriously. And it seems to be exactly at the point when all these childless women took over government, like Shenna Bellows and Jenna Griswold. And, women I know who are millennials, who are basically the same age, give or take a few years, they have no sense of humor. Misrepresentation here. President Trump learned that the Capitol was under attack by 1:21 p.m. The Capitol was never under attack. I think what prompted President Trump to make the video tweet telling everybody to go home and that he loves them and that he wants everyone to have peace, yada, yada, yada. This is that kind of thing here, what I'm referring to. I think that was because of Ashley Babbitt. I think that really took thunder out of the whole event. And of course, that was performed by the Capitol Police. That guy who did that should certainly not be a cop anymore. Oh, she was nice enough even to use her own ink. Okay. December 28th, 2023. What an asshole. At this point, I think they're just doing this to get national media attention. Because now, her name is on the tip of your tongue. Let's look at this CNN vid.
We have breaking news this hour as Maine's top election official has now disqualified Donald Trump from the ballot in that state, an effort that was underway. CNN's Caitlin Polance has just read this filing and is following this. Caitlin, what is the Secretary of State saying in this decision here?
Caitlin, the Secretary of State of Maine is saying that Donald Trump is not qualified to be on the ballot in the primary in the state of Maine after reviewing petitions from different people who came to her and wanted to remove Trump from the ballot. I'm still looking through it, but one of the findings here from the Secretary of State is that Trump must meet certain qualifications to be able to be on the ballot, and is finding that he is not meeting those qualifications and thus cannot be on the ballot. Now, this is...
Now, it's interesting because she cited some case law in there, the Secretary of State did, but she did not cite the Constitution itself to back up some of these conditions that she is claiming are mandatory for a candidate to be on the ballot. And I think those are the issues that need to be brought up as it's appealed to the Superior Court in Maine.
A big decision from the Secretary of State of Maine. Make no mistake about that. It is in line with what Colorado appears to have done here as well, with the Colorado Supreme Court looking at Donald Trump being on the primary ballot there and saying he couldn't be. But the thing about Maine is that there's going to be a lot of opportunity to appeal this. So the Secretary of State is the person here making that.
He's got 3 levels of appeal. The Superior Court, which is the trial court in Maine, and the Court of Appeals, and then the Supreme Court in Maine, and then, of course, to the U.S. Supreme Court. So the issue here, I think, is when the U.S. Supreme Court lays down a decision in early January, when they maintain a stay over the Colorado decision on January 6th, I believe it is. Yeah, it's going to be January 6th. How symbolic, right? And I didn't even realize that until now. So they intentionally created this stay on January 5th, the Colorado Supreme Court did, so that the U.S. Supreme Court could extend the stay on January 6th. So the Colorado Supreme Court is literally trying to send a message to the U.S. Supreme Court just through this date, January 6th.
Decision instead of the court system. But what happens next is that Trump and others all have the opportunity to go to Maine's court system to appeal this. And all of that can play out in a very short amount of time. We could have some sort of resolution in the courts, depending on how fast the courts move and how fast everyone goes to the court. It could be a decision where we're here.
Well, so the U.S. Supreme Court's decision will immediately end all the state appeals in Maine itself, because they'll lay down a decision that will say that Trump is on the ballot in all these states, and then they'll just cite that decision, and then it will immediately end whatever is going on in Maine.
Hearing the Maine's court system also coming in and interpreting the state law within a month or so, basically by the end of January.
And so, Caitlin Polantz, just because this is breaking news, we truly have just gotten this in. I just want to be clear. The Secretary of State here is
Caitlin Collins. Now, it's interesting, too, because remember, Caitlin Collins did a couple of those interviews with Trump a couple months ago, I think during the summer. And, Caitlin Collins is so anti-Trump, yet she's literally licking his balls trying to get, an interview with him. And I think it was her highest rated interview ever.
Is pausing her decision pending potential action from the Supreme Court?
I have not gotten to that point in reading this conclusion yet. I would have to look at that a little bit more closely. Things get very complicated when it comes to pausing rulings. But one of the things with this that we should be very clear about here is that the courts are almost certainly going to be weighing in, both state courts in Maine, because there's all kinds of things in the law for Maine to allow Trump or others to appeal this decision from the Secretary of State. That state court can look at it. And of course, Caitlin, the Supreme Court of the United States is already looking at that petition from.
These are two dumb people. Well, Caitlin Collins is a little bit sharper than, the senior crime and justice reporter. They don't know what they're talking about. The Supreme Court is going to create a firm decision that will relate to all of these states trying to take Trump off the ballot to eliminate this lawfare that they're doing not only to Trump, but the GOP.
Colorado's Republican Party saying, please weigh in, because every state has a different process and is making different decisions about Donald Trump being on primary ballots in 2024.
I mean, Caitlin, this is fascinating given what happened in Colorado just last week when the Supreme Court there decided to remove Donald Trump from the primary ballot in a 4-3 decision. That was unprecedented. We had never seen that happen in our nation's history. Now it has happened for a second time in the state of Maine, following the decision by the
Oh, here they go, trying to ramp up. Oh, there's multiple states doing this. It's really not. It's these corrupt Democrats. Childless Secretary of State Jenna Griswold obviously had some email communication with Shenna Bellows.
Michigan Supreme Court to say, we're not getting involved in this. He can stay on the ballot.
Someone really should FOIA and request all communications and documents passed between Jenna Griswold in Colorado and Shenna Bellows in Maine and any other state. But this is ripe definitely for public consumption.
I think what's important here is a little bit of background, because for those who haven't been following this closely, there were 3 complaints here, and 2 of them were based on the same section of the Constitution that decision in Colorado was, which is, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, basically finding, that Trump, as they did in Colorado, he could not hold office again because of his actions on January 6th. Given the difference here and how this went not through the courts, but to the Secretary of State, What could that mean for the future of the decision that has just been made by the Secretary of State in Maine?
Yeah, well, who is making this decision is always going to be a question, especially if the U.S. Supreme Court looks at this. So in the situation in Colorado, it was the Supreme Court of Colorado, the highest court in that state, looking at basically holding a trial to determine Trump was an insurrectionist in their view.
Okay, the Supreme Court does not hold, in Colorado, does not hold trials. Caitlin Polans. So, why is she a reporter at CNN? They were holding oral argument on the decision by the trial court in Colorado. They were not holding a trial in the Supreme Court.
And also determining they had the ability to take him off the primary ballot under the state's law. Now, in all of the other states, including in Maine, there is always going to be a question before the Supreme Court. Can these people even do this? Can a Secretary of State make this sort of decision in party primaries related to who voters can cast their ballots for? And so whenever this goes to the Supreme Court, it's very unlikely at the very beginning, right now, where we're still in this primary process, this first emergency application is before the U.S. Supreme Court, that the Supreme Court, the 9 justices in Washington, D.C., that they're going to be making a call on whether Trump is an insurrectionist or not. They're very likely going to be looking first at the sort of thing that the Colorado GOP wants them to look at, saying, you can't remove the ability for voters to vote for certain people. And that's just the big question that is before the Supreme Court as far as the papers we have right now.
Caitlin Pullen, stand by, because I know you're reading through this decision. Come back with us with more. We also have Norm Eisen and Michael Moore here with us. Norm, what's your reaction to this decision by the Maine?
Okay, I can already tell you that these two assholes who dressed up for this bullshit interview, if you want to even call it that, with Caitlin Collins, are dumb shits, because, who dresses up in a plaid suit like this? This is just ridiculous. He looks like a moron.
Secretary of State saying that Donald Trump cannot be on the ballot there.
Well, Caitlin, it's a part
Look, if CNN wanted me to be on a panel interview kind of like this, I'd be wearing a surfer shirt. I'd be wearing this hat. I'd be wearing, if I don't have this hat, I'd be wearing a different hat. Fuck those people.
of a pattern now, and it's not just that the Colorado courts came to this decision. Remember, the January 6th committee looked at these same issues and also determined that Donald Trump had engaged
Oh, okay. He looks like he's a zombie, doesn't he?
in insurrection. So
No,
I think
amazing.
it validates.
He's this old, I don't want to sound, he's out of touch, all right? He's Norm Eisen, I don't know, he's probably,
The concerns of those who believe that the former president is not qualified. As we've
he's no Roy Cohn, that's for sure.
talked about, every state addresses this question of how they will or will not apply the 14th Amendment differently under their state laws. Here in this decision that we're still reading from Maine Secretary of State Shayna Bellows.
You think your boy Norm Eisen is getting any clients by appearing on CNN? If you see an attorney appearing on CNN, I guess he probably just gets paid by CNN. But if you see an attorney appear on CNN and they're not just tearing the whole place down, not to hire him or her.
What she says is that Donald Trump's petition to be on the ballot, where he says he's qualified, is not accurate because he's not qualified under the 14th Amendment.
What a fucking asshole. All right, let's read some comments. Sentiment analysis is the most powerful thing that you could really ever do on the internet, and it is really the reason the internet exists, is to understand what the public thinks of any event. And especially with these Trump political events, the sentiment analysis that we've been able to do already is critical. Mike Clayton says, us Americans are going to see who took an oath to America and who doesn't. There's a lot of replies. Interesting. Yeah. Hope they all dump the Trump. Yvonne, the world isn't listening to you for good reason. Notice how these are all women? This looks like a woman too. Muslim vote guarantees Republican Party victory. That's an interesting comment. Take him off. Put him back on. Take him off. What is going on? Lane? Illegal migrants and Chinese communists means Democrat victories. The Constitution is not a cafeteria where you pick which parts you want. Yeah, that's true. I like that. It means you have to engage in an insurrection. Number one, there was never a conviction of Trump engaging in an insurrection. Even if there was, which there isn't, but even if there was, it doesn't apply to the presidency. Two, there was no insurrection. And, you know, the way that these kangaroo courts operate, you know, they could get 1,000 felonies against anyone, including President Trump, if he, you know, accidentally throws a wrapper out of a vehicle, or, you know, litters on the street. I mean, it's just, it's incredible. Are you eating out of lead plates? So I guess they're mocking Ozark, saying that he is or she is crazy. Okay. Like Nero, who had lead poisoning and went crazy at the later stages of his life. That's the famous lead poisoning political head of state analogy. Good, because that's not what happened, Red Hat. If their state law says they can take them off, that's it. That's not true. We have federalism. We have a overarching constitution. Okay. I do notice that the comments on YouTube seem to have less grammar than X or Twitter. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because we have a non-English speaking population on YouTube more so than X. Or maybe I just read different things. Every time the state removes Trump from their ballot, an angel gets its wings. Yeah, that's true. I mean, sorry, that I read that wrong. I mean, because it makes Trump more popular. So now actually reading it for what it is, Goya Solidar, and they're actually saying the opposite, which is I missed that because I'm an idiot. It's a little bit late, 10 o'clock. That they want Trump off the ballot. And it's meaning that it just, every time they do this, it's the number one story in the nation. It gives Trump way more cred. It gives everybody who knows exactly what's going on here, who knows the truth, way more evidence about how corrupt these people are. And, you know, God is watching. And God works in mysterious ways. So, you know, I personally, in my view, every time Trump is taken off a ballot like this, it just creates a wider margin of victory for Trump. Everything, you know, it's like that passage from the Bible, excuse me, in Isaiah, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. That's what so the weapon that they think that they have, which is to take Trump off the ballot, is turned against them. Trump gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And ultimately in life, we know that God's will always will play out. There you go, Maine. Force the Supreme Court to openly defy the plain language of the Constitution. Yep, exactly. So notice how there's a lot more replies to this one. Not in the Constitution, sorry. You have no idea what an insurrection is. Thanks for weighing in, Sally. Now they're calling people traitors. I'd suggest you read Section 1 of the 14th Amendment before you make this comment again. They go hand in hand. The 14th Amendment doesn't state a trial is required. It's true, it doesn't. No due process of law, dude. You can't deny rights without due process of law. Not required to be convicted. Oh, pray tell. Is that a threat? From David Cottrell. These people must be up in Maine just talking shit to each other. That's actually the first time that I've ever seen this word spelled out. If that's spelled correctly. You learn something new every day. I've heard it many, many times verbally, just never seen it spelled out. Zachary Sound. Exactly. All states follow suit. Let's go let the cards fall. Jay Strahan. You need to convict with the jury for insurrection first. Nobody even trying to do that. Once GOP states start going 10 times worse, then you will start crying. Well, GOP states aren't doing that. Should they take Biden off the ballot in some of those states? Maybe. But would it really make a dent? Because they're GOP states. Biden's not going to win anyways. They're going to be like, whatever. And you could make the same argument about Maine or Colorado if they're blue states. I think Maine is, I'm pretty sure. Colorado, I mean, has changed so drastically. It's a dynamic state. We were just talking about Lauren Boebert, who's a Republican, switched districts, but it's a dynamic state in that, like traditionally it's always been red to me. And now in the past few election cycles, it's been blue. So it just tells you, and I've been to Colorado a few times, but I don't know that much about it. I like Colorado, beautiful state. I like skiing. I've skied in Colorado a few times. Let's see, Buddha, 8FK. Maine is a fine state with good people. Oh, okay. Just not their Secretary of State. Love this. Yeah, that's good. A great Secretary of State who knows and acts on duty when required. God keep her safe. Well, yeah, I mean, we should pray for all these people to be safe, but at the same time, she's not a fine person. Okay. Supreme Court must take this case and shut this nonsense down. Yep. Yes, indeed. I've suddenly gained huge respect for Maine. I've lost respect for Maine, so that's interesting. It's always been a badass state, besides stunningly beautiful. Don't hold on too tightly. It'll be overturned. Yes, it will. This stuff is like very easy from a legal perspective too. Like the fact that they're trying to make a big deal out of this stuff, knowing that it's going to get nullified in a few weeks anyways, is kind of insane. Okay. Constitution or nothing. Ooh, someone said no dictators. Great news. Great news. I'm just startled, I guess, when people say this, because it's great news in that it's just going to make Trump more loved by supporters, and it's going to bring independents closer and closer to voting for Trump. Okay, yeah. You notice how all the people who are anti-Trump here are nanny moms, middle-aged women, baby boomers, typically. I'm beginning to believe in democracy again. It's got a picture of a cute little dog. But you know this is a woman. You just know it. Because who else puts a picture of their cute dog like this and then talks about democracy? Some woman who's probably drunk on house wine. We do not have a democracy. We the people will decide. And then the first person replying to it is Yvonne, because they recognize this is probably a woman. So they feel more comfortable replying to this than other messages. Nothing says democracy like removing the leading candidate from the ballot. You obviously don't understand the Constitution. I can just imagine these people arguing in real life, can't you? If Biden gets in office again, the U.S. is done for. I'll be moving. Ha ha ha. Let me just check the comments here quick. Lincoln Johnson 4428. Comments like these make me wonder if you know what democracy means. Probably not. You don't sound educated. Well, the ad hominem personal attacks, you know, I think you're taking this way too seriously once you get to this point here, bro. And that's coming from me, who constantly personally attacks people on the internet. I mean, not, I gotta rephrase that. Not personally attacks, but criticizes people on the internet who are generally 99% of the time public officials. It's perfectly fine criticizing those people, but to get into these little turf battles with regular average people seems kind of stupid to me, bro. Lincoln Johnson. And then people get sidetracked. We are a republic. Who cares? No wonder you are how you are. Don't even know the difference. Incredible. I just ignore all this stuff. It's not important. That's wonderful. Applaud Maine. Now, he's got James Black, I'm referring to here. He's got 15 likes on this. He's got a picture of what appears to be kind of this firefighter hat here. And so you know he's a state worker, part of the bureaucracy, local embedded deep state. Local government embedded deep state. So he's getting paid through the state. And also those guys are one of the groups that are always anti-Trump for some reason. Because they want to continue having, you know, control over everything in their little fiefdoms. They don't want people to be able to criticize them. They don't actually believe in constitutional rights. Such good news. Ooh, great decision. Yes, thumbs up. This is oh, look, another woman. Who cares? And again, picture of a cute dog. This is democracy. Smile. I hope more states will follow suit. Boy, you know, you wonder with these people, like, you got to work with these people, right? These are like everyday people in society. And if they really believe this, they think that they can just kick people off. And these are the same people who are yelling, oh, you know, accept everyone. Let's be inclusive. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Yeah, but we need to kick specific people off. Yeah. It just, you know, like, what if they get kicked off? Something that they're really into. You know, what if they don't have banking any longer? What if their bank decides, hey, you know, we don't want to deal with this person named Who Cares 5114. Oh, suddenly they realize, you know, they finally wake up. Oh shit, you know, I can't, you know, I think they kind of think they're immune, or they're just ignorant. of what all of this actually means on a personal level. And I don't think they'll ever figure this out until they actually experience it on a personal level. And so you have to, unfortunately, show these people, like, who cares? At some point when they take it too far, like right now, say, hey, you know, like, if you're gonna not be inclusive of someone who is a legitimate candidate on a ballot, I don't want you working here. I don't want to do business with you. It's frustrating. But you kind of have to fight fire with fire, right? Okay, so we could go on and on. So these are, you know, of course, it's YouTube. So you kind of get, I would say 60% Democrat, 40% Republican here. If this tweet were on X, I would say it's probably 80% Republican. Oh, look. Another one of these nanny mommies. Yay! Finally upholding the Constitution. There's hope. Has no idea what she's talking about. None. Fucking assholes. Oh, look, see? Another nanny mommy. That is amazing. If this needs to happen, state by state, let's do it. State by state. It's a typo. Let's do it. He cannot run for 2024. He is not competent to run. Thank you, Maine. Just, these people are brain dead, man. Oh, and then we get an immigrant supportive of it as well. Little Pislier. Looks Chinese to me. This is a great win for truth and democracy. Thank you, Secretary of State of Maine, for having the courage to carry out our Constitution. Life is short, 99. Hallelujah. All states should do it. Okay, well, we got a bunch of knuckleheads here. All right, so what else do we have? Let's switch gears a little bit from this nasty little decision from Shinna Bellows. Jenna Griswold's little minion accomplice. Okay, let's play some Wrangle Star. This is the little short he's got. Now, I don't know who he's referring to, this beloved character. I'm going to do some more digging on who that is and ask some questions. Maybe look at the comments. I do kind of want to read some of the comments here, and maybe that'll give me a little bit more of an explanation.
On the internet, on media, all of the violence, Antifa, far left, far right, and you see that as violent. Beloved, you're shown on the internet, on media, all of the violence, Antifa, far left, far right, and you see that as violence. What we don't see is that we grew up in violence. The violence is the oppression that's been put upon us from an overbearing tax law, injustice in the criminal courts, pay to play, extorting us through taxes and fees and everything where you cannot do anything. A man can't build a shed. A man can't cut down a tree without the permission of Big Daddy. Remember, the violence that you're seeing, what they're telling you is violence, is a pushback to a system that has been oppressing us for a long time. Flip the narrative. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Be careful of who you would point the finger at as the bad guy. Beloved, you're shown on the internet, on media,
so
all of the violence,
Antifa,
far left, far right, and you see that as violence. What we don't see is that we grew up in violence. The violence is the oppression that's been put upon us from an overbearing tax law, injustice in the criminal courts, pay to play, extorting us through taxes and fees and everything where you cannot do anything. A man can't build a shed. A man can't cut down a tree without the permission of Big Daddy. Remember, the violence that you're seeing, what they're telling you is violence, is a pushback to a system that has been oppressing us for a long time. Flip the narrative. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Be careful of who you would point the finger at as the bad
Yeah.
guy. Beloved.
So let's read the comments. I'm just rehydrating my cup here with some water. I put some vitamins B and C in here, I think, from one of those little capsule dropper things. So yeah, and so a little bit of fiber in here as well. Pretty good. It's got some good flavoring to it. Okay. 24/7 media cycle isn't doing us any favors either. The protests that we see and that are allowed to happen are orchestrated by very powerful people. If people protested the real problems like you mentioned here, they would be charged federally as terrorists. You saw it with the trucker protests in Canada or the farmer protests here in Europe, how the elites treat you when you're protesting the right issues. 171 likes on this. Interesting. One reply shadow banned. Compliments of Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL. That's pretty funny. Yeah, I can't see the shadow banned reply either. LOL. So funny. I love this place. Have you ever noticed on YouTube where you'll make a comment and suddenly the next day you'll go, and you can kind of test this with a different account, and then you go and look and the comment isn't there, they've censored it and you didn't even know it. And this is this whole shadow banning thing. And it's then you're like, why am I even commenting if they're just going to delete them in a way that they're deceiving me, thinking that I've actually made that comment, other people can read it, but in actuality that's not true. And it's demoralizing. Yeah, we're not paying to use YouTube. I mean, I technically am paying them for the premium, $14 a month, but that's another thing. Like, you're paying them $14 a month and they're shadow banning and censoring your comments. Come on. What a world we live in, right? And then, if you're pissed about it, if you're like a little bit frustrated, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to contact YouTube and bitch about it. Good luck, because, everything is automated to such an extent that you'll never get to any real person unless you somehow work at YouTube. They shut the Canadian truckers' bank accounts. Think about that for a moment. They will be able to shut all new cars and trucks off in 2028. I really think someone does not agree with you, so they shut off your bank account. Canada did it. So right before they shut these bank accounts off, I had expressed a detailed analysis to a couple people privately, powerful, prominent people, and who had done a lot of academic research on this and went on Joe Rogan and stuff. And I got pretty good responses from them, and I'm not going to name them. But they said before this is even before the trucker protests in Canada, that they thought that there was sufficient regulation in the banking industry to prevent this. And I gave them, X number of reasons in response why that actually was not true either. And I was expressing my major concern that I think the next stage here was that they were going to try and shut people's bank accounts off, and not people like they were already targeting, Alex Jones being one of them, or Mike Lindell, because Mike Lindell was being targeted, or other people. I was just talking about the average protester. And I made that very clear in my analysis. And they didn't believe me, but I think they believe me now. And, these are people who are doing this kind of work, and they're doing really, really good work, and they're very smart people. And if in their defense, I probably wouldn't believe it either if someone told me the same stuff that I was telling them. But I knew this was going to happen. I knew this was going to happen way back when. Okay. And most of my experience, at least early in my field, in my career was in banking as a software developer, really on the ground, looking at what's actually happening, seeing things. And I don't know, I just knew. And yeah, I mean, when I was expressing my concern without disclosing anything that I can't disclose, I was at the time working as developer on a lending platform, and I was seeing things then too. I remember the day that I had sent some of that information. I was actually building some NACHA, the National Automated Clearinghouse, which is a ACH sort of regulatory agency. They have yearly requirements that come out, and you have to look at their API docs. So I was actually implementing those when I was thinking about all of this for, probably was the largest lending platform in North America. I was extremely concerned. Well said. People are easily distracted by the current thing. They're talking about NPCs, non-player characters. The whole idea that in video games you have these like bots or robots that are controlled by the computer in a video game that just are drones walking around. And that's what most people are in life as well. They're not thinking about it, or they're trying to they just believe anything they're told. Okay, yep, talking about NPCs. Correct. Even collect rainwater or having a garden for food. Everything government orchestrated is meant to keep you in a box. You ain't kidding. I'm hearing now that some areas are wanting you to pay for a permit to collect roof water? Are you serious? Jeez. They want their grubby paws on water control and fees? They don't call it a... What are they going to go around and inspect your roof? See if you're collecting rainwater? They don't call it a box. They call it a pod. 1984 lives stronger than ever before. I'm growing my food. I don't care what anyone says. The enemy is anyone in the way of truth and justice. I like that. That's true. Got 20 likes. A house divided cannot stand, and they have us divided. Good. That's catchy. Mind if I use it? Explain yourself. Not sure if you know, but this is part of a speech by Abraham Lincoln about the division of anti versus pro-slavery. No kidding, huh? Imagine that. Those that wear small hats. So I want to, at this stage, play the Civil War video, the trailer. Wow. I'm deep in this nested thread. No, it's not this one. Here we go. So I picked up something in this trailer which I hadn't seen before, and it is that they mention that the president of the United States in this movie is serving his third term. Isn't that interesting? Pre-programming the fact that there's going to be a third-term president. And the first thing I thought about was Obama, because this is pretty much Obama's third term. But also the fact that Trump is now, assuming that everything is fair in 2024, so who knows, but Trump will likely be the first president to win 3 elections, even though Trump was cheated out of 2020. So it hangs on the balance of kind of both of those sort of equations. And I didn't catch that little statement originally when I was watching this trailer. So let's play this again, and you can hear it for yourself.
States have seceded.
The United States Army ramps up activity.
The White House issued warnings to the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance.
The three-term president assures the uprising.
There it is, three-term president. You hear it? Play this again. Now it's kind of soft in here. It's subtle. It's like subconscious. You don't hear it unless you've seen this a couple times and you start to actually listen and analyze every single word.
The Florida Alliance.
The three-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.
Let me know if you want to try anything on.
Isn't that interesting?
I guess aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on.
And you notice how these characters that they've cast in these roles, this one here, the lead male character, looks kind of like a Mexican or a Venezuelan or a Guatemalan immigrant, but he speaks English as if he's maybe from California or even Texas or Arizona. So I've heard a lot of chatter that this is pre-programming an event where they're now kind of like reclassifying Americans to be the illegal immigrants who are coming into the country because they have so many of them, and then casting out natural born Americans and then identifying them as the rebels as part of like the Florida or the Texas California alliance in this movie.
All across America.
We just try to stay out. With what we see on the news, seems like it's for the best.
And then you have the young woman here who only listens to mainstream media and mentions it in this comment. She said, from what she hears from the news, it's best to stay out of it. And that's also something we're seeing now, which is that these mostly women, not younger women per se, but they want to believe anything that they're told, because that offers them a certain level of safety psychologically.
Citizens of America, the so-called Western forces of Texas and California have suffered a very great...
And it's almost modeled after Call of Duty or something. Some of these first-person shooter video games.
defeat at the hands of the United States military.
Mr. President, do you regret the use of airstrikes against American citizens?
You also notice how ground zero for all this is New York City. And everything that we're seeing take place now in Manhattan and Brooklyn is illustrative of, you know, this kind of script.
We're moving to D.C. today.
We need to go down there.
They shoot journalists on sight in the Capitol. Every instinct in me says this is death. Bloody.
Every time I survived the war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are.
There's some kind of misunderstanding here. What? Well, you're American, okay? Okay. What kind of American are you? You don't know?
The Western forces will reach the White House.
And then, you know, white men are seen as the rebels, the white supremacists.
On July 4th.
Oh my God.
Get in the car! Get in the car!
You notice how this guy is kind of black and he's the savior in the movie, saving these women. The protagonist.
You're gonna hang back.
Or this guy who's the lead male role. I mean, they're both kind of, it's like a miniature protagonist and a major protagonist.
Not hanging back.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go, 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 go!
God bless America.
Wow, powerful, right? Okay, so Eagle Star, Sheena Bellows. I wanted to quickly talk about this as well. They raised the home of those. Ooh, we got some anonymous source stuff too. They raised the home of hold on, let me just quickly respond to this. See if there's any comments on Rumble. If anyone's watching on Rumble, feel free to live chat it up. All right, so back to the Idaho situation with Brian Kohberger and these victims, Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Gonclaves, Zaina Kernodul, and Madison Mogan. They made this a big story earlier today, and right before I ended the stream, I saw this, and I should have probably tried to play it before I ended the stream, but I was kind of stretched for time. But let's play this.
All right, you were looking at live pictures right now of what was the house where 4 University of Idaho students were murdered. That house has been torn down, or in the process of being torn down, despite the objections of victims' families. They wanted all of this held off until after the suspect's trial. It didn't happen, and now all those objections too late. CNN's
Pretty fishy, right?
Veronica Miracle is outside the house in Idaho. Talk to us about
why do they want to destroy evidence in the middle of the trial?
What's happening and what it all means.
Well, John, the demolition started early and it is moving very quickly. We're going to pan off so that you can see for yourself here. An excavator has already taken out the entire front of the house. The back half of the house rather remains standing, and debris trucks have just been lined up taking debris out. There's about a half a dozen trucks right behind our camera waiting.
And they have a group of local cops protecting the excavator here and the site itself. It looks pretty fishy.
They've been very systematic, and university officials expect this to be finished by the end of the day. Officials have been wanting this house torn down since they received it. There's been security concerns about people breaking in, and it's also a daily reminder of the horrific crimes that happened here. But you touched on those 2 families that had actually come outspoken yesterday. They were very concerned about this being torn down, and they had a list of about 8 points, essentially wanting to make the trial as easy as possible for the jury, because of course they're hoping for a conviction in this case. They brought up points like, what about the jury looking at vantage points of the roommates inside the house or outside of the house? If evidence is presented around the perimeter or entry and exit points, now a jury wouldn't be able to see that. But the university has been in touch with the prosecutor's office every step of the way, and according to the prosecutor's office, Idaho code actually would not allow the jury to have entered the home because it is so different than when the crime originally happened. You have to remember there have been cleanup crews, hazmat crews. They also had all of the belongings.
Feels like this happened ages ago, doesn't it? Happened in the middle of 2022, right? So it's almost been a year and a half already. It's crazy.
Things removed so that the family members could take.
Well, we don't know what the landlord was thinking here. Maybe they wanted to sell the property really quickly.
Them home, so the inside of the house is very altered. But take a listen to.
And they're, trying to cover something up. What are they trying to cover up? That's the real question.
What the University of Idaho public information officer had to say.
So I think there was a point there where we thought with the October trial that things would work out, that the house could remain. And when the trial got put off indefinitely, the conversations definitely changed. And while we certainly understand that there are a lot of emotions around that house and for the families especially, we also listen to our community and talk with prosecutors and the defense and believe that now is a really good time to go ahead and take that house down.
It's amazing to me. So
obviously a very complicated and emotional decision here. This house, once it is leveled, is just going to be an empty lot, and the university is creating a memorial garden on campus sometime next year.
I don't know. They're up to something. I don't know what it is. I'm kind of curious what the comments are, and I'll just briefly go through some of this. Yeah, here's one. If I was the dean of that school, I would say no, don't tear it down. Here's Holly Speaks. I sure hope he doesn't get off for a piece of needed evidence in that house. Were you even listening to the story? I sure hope he doesn't get convicted solely as a matter of convenience and manufactured evidence by the Moscow Police Department. So people are on to the fact that this doesn't seem to be legit. But let's move on to another story. This is sad. I hate talking about it. Okay, so yesterday we played your boy George Santos and the alleged break-in of his vehicle. And I watched it first and then I watched it again. And I showed a little bit of the base of the window in the car and how George had his hand on that base. And usually if a window breaks, there's jagged glass that's kind of hanging from the windowsill, right? Whether that's the base or the sides or even the top. But yet you had Santos, lining or moving his hand along the base of the window. And you would think, and you also didn't see any of the glass inside the vehicle from the angle that the camera, that his iPhone or whatever phone he was using was positioned at. You did see sparkling glass on the ground, on the concrete, the asphalt, that showed that something did happen. And then the angle or the trajectory of the glass, I'm not an expert or anything on this, but you see all these cars being broken into, especially in California with the crime waves we're seeing. And glass mostly goes into the vehicle, and then some of it carries or ricochets out externally from the vehicle, right? But we didn't see any glass inside the vehicle, so who knows? Now, I'm not saying it was staged. That's not what I'm saying. I really actually don't care. But I was just picking up on, a few little details there. Okay, so Eric Adams said that he staged this whole thing. And then went into the whole campaign finance stuff and saying that he was fabricating a bunch of these claims, yada, yada, yada. Boy, I'm telling you, if I was George Santos and my car was broken into and I was 100% sure that it was broken into and I wasn't trying to fabricate anything, and Eric Adams came out and said that shit about me, I would be fucking livid. And I would really, I'd criticize him all day, every day. Because it shows, if anything, that Eric Adams isn't responsive to the needs of the citizens of New York, and that crime is not an issue for him. and that he's trying to respond with personal attacks against George Santos instead of talking about the actual reduction in crime or the policies that he's putting in place to reduce crime further. And it seems like these car break-ins are at an all-time high in New York right now. So Tucker came out with this. I wanted to go into tuckercarlson.com and watch the entire video. This has got 2.7 million views. If I refreshed it, I bet you it has probably 3 million. Let's see. Okay, so almost 4 million now. And Tucker was talking about the fact that Derek Chauvin did not kill George Floyd. George Floyd died of a drug overdose, which everyone knew immediately. And then had an attorney that is representing Derek Chauvin named Gregory Erickson come on Tucker's interview here. And Gregory Erickson works for Cardell, Mormon, and Erickson. It's a firm in downtown Minneapolis. It's led by an attorney named Eric Cardell, who was sanctioned and referred to the Professional Responsibility Organization in DC because he filed an election lawsuit in Wisconsin, and there were some challenges, and I can't remember the actual technical details, but it was a former FISA chief judge who sanctioned Eric Cardell. Eric Cardell went to Harvard and then the University of Chicago Law School. He's from northern Minnesota. Eric Cardell also has something like 8 kids, and Eric Cardell has gained a lot of notoriety around Minnesota for winning a couple lawsuits. I believe that he won a election-related lawsuit in 2020 or 2019. It was something minor and stupid, actually, but it was related, and it was petitioned to the U.S. Supreme Court, where I believe the Secretary of State and Steve Simon in Minnesota had banned Trump MAGA hats from polling places, and he won that case. Pretty stupid. Anyways, Bill Mormon, who should have done this interview, by the way, but he brought in his assistant, Gregory Erickson. Bill Mormon has some hearing issues, and maybe that's why he didn't do this interview, because he wasn't technically set up to do it. Eric Cardell could have easily done it. I think Eric Cardell could have done a much better job than Gregory Erickson here. Bill Mormon is handling the meat of all the appeals. Now, as everyone knows, Eric Nelson handled and botched the case in front of Judge Peter Cahill in Hennepin County District Court at the Hennepin County Government Center in downtown Minneapolis. They're talking about the fact that Derek Chauvin was stabbed 22 times in federal prison down in Tucson. And now apparently he's back in the hospital unit. He's out of the he's out of it's hard to, with Gregory Erickson's way of talking, it's hard to understand what's going on, but apparently he was in the hospital, but now he's kind of like out of surgery and stuff, and he's back in the hospital section of the federal prison down in Tucson. And they're talking about the lack of information that's being provided by this federal prison. And Gregory Erickson is saying that he's getting the information from Derek's mom. And if anything, I think Gregory Erickson should be flying down there. I'm surprised he hasn't, and tried to see him, especially when he was in the hospital. You think when he got stabbed 22 times, Derek Chauvin, if you were Gregory Erickson, you would fly down there and you'd want to meet him in the hospital right away, right? But he didn't do that.
Taking place right before us, and very few are remarking upon it. And it has to do with Derek Chauvin. He's the Minneapolis cop who became famous Memorial Day 2020 when George Floyd died. Chauvin is now serving 21 years in federal prison for murder, for killing George Floyd. The problem is he did not murder George Floyd, and we know that conclusively because the medical examiner who performed the autopsy on George Floyd confirmed he was not asphyxiated, he was not choked to death. he most likely died of a drug OD. He had fatal levels of fentanyl in his system, and that's been known for some time, though again, ignored. Ignored to the extent that, well, Derek Chauvin was convicted of murder and sent to prison. And then on November 24th of this year, right after Thanksgiving, Chauvin was stabbed 22 times by another inmate with an improvised knife. Now, the man who stabbed him is a known FBI informant.
I'll be right back.
Derek Chauvin is now out of the hospital and back in Tucson. He is alive. He's still in prison. Gregory Erickson is his lawyer and joins us now to discuss this case. Mr. Erickson, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having us on.
First of all, how is your client? And if you don't mind, if news reports haven't said very much about what exactly happened, would you tell us what you know?
Well, I can tell you what we know, and it's not a tremendous amount. Everything, the only first-hand reports I'm getting from are from his family. Even though my partner Bill Mormon and I are his attorneys for his appeal, and for perhaps some post-trial activities, we attempted to contact the Tucson federal institution on numerous occasions and were rebuffed. My partner Bill Mormon has a contact at the prison that he had been working with throughout the appeal to get a hold of Derek for various things, and basically after the stabbing he went dark. What we do know, and this is from the family.
May I interrupt you? Is a prison allowed to prevent an inmate in the middle of an appeals process from speaking to his lawyers? I didn't know that was legal.
No, and they're not. They're not allowed to keep him. But they didn't keep him from my partner during the appeal process. It was really only after the stabbing that basically the family and the lawyers were shut out for a period of over 48 hours. And so what we know is from Derek reporting to his family members about what happened. Basically, he was in the law library, and how he was allowed to be in the law library with other prisoners, I don't know. I'm not familiar with the inner workings of federal prison, but I would think that somebody as high profile as Derek probably shouldn't be allowed to be in there.
All right, so Gregory Erickson kind of sounds like a dipshit here, because he has represented a lot of people, and in his defense, a lot of his work has been civil, representing banks, Wells Fargo, US Bank, and that's where the bulk of their money comes from a law firm perspective. Now, he got involved in the Derek Chauvin case because it's a huge case, and they got involved probably for various reasons, but I believe that they're representing Derek Chauvin pro bono. Now, I could be wrong about that, but that's my hunch, okay? Because I know Cardell, and I know that's how he operates. He likes to take on these cases, or maybe they got one of these organizations like the Thomas More Society to fund some of this legal work. That's another hunch I have. Again, I could be wrong about that. I'm speculating. Now, what's interesting here, though, is that Gregory Erickson is not sure about any of the facts related to why Derek Chauvin was in the law library when he was stabbed 22 times. And then saying, well, you know, he doesn't think that Derek Chauvin should have been unsupervised in the law library, yada, yada, yada. And the thing is, so Derek Chauvin would never have been in the law library if Gregory Erickson was doing his job, A. B, Derek Chauvin wouldn't be in the law library if Eric Nelson had done his job in front of Judge Peter Cahill. Derek Chauvin would never have been in the law library if the Hennepin County prosecutors and the Attorney General in Minnesota, Keith Ellison, had done their job and had allowed for George Floyd's autopsy results, including the fact that he was high on fentanyl, high on whatever else he was on, if they had allowed that to be admitted into evidence and allowed for Derek Chauvin to have a fair trial. But I really blame Eric Nelson. I blame, to a much lesser degree, Gregory Erickson and Bill Moorman. It's really Eric Nelson's fault. Eric Nelson is a loser, and I truly mean that. Eric Nelson and his, if you can even call it that, a law firm called Hellberg Defense, has been repeatedly sued for malpractice. Okay? And the truth is that Derek Chauvin has a constitution, we're talking about the Constitution, has a constitutional right to be in the law library in a federal prison. Okay? He has a right to access legal resources, to do legal research on cases related to what he's appealing to the United States Supreme Court and what he had previously been appealing to the Minnesota Supreme Court, which rejected his direct appeal. And now he has to raise a post-conviction petition, which I would recommend that he does immediately, especially considering the fact that he's got the public on his side right now, and raise the issue that he had just been stabbed 22 times. And the other thing here is the individual who is allegedly responsible for this, stabbing Derek Chauvin 22 times, is an FBI informant. And why did this happen symbolically in a law library? Why don't they want Derek Chauvin to have a fair appeal, to have a fair post-conviction hearing after he files his post-conviction petition? Why don't they want him to have any fair ability to raise issues? Why do they want to thwart any effort by Derek Chauvin to legally defend himself? So it's symbolic that it happened in the law library. It's very fishy. They were up to something. And then the FBI informant apparently said that it was Black Friday, and that's why he did it. It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. He shouldn't have been. Well, he shouldn't have been in there with other inmates. He should have been able to access the law library or a partitioned section of it if it was protected against other people who had to use that room, who were appealing their own cases or whatever. So yeah, and Eric Nelson didn't make a public comment on this when I think the Star Tribune emailed him, CNN emailed Fox News. I mean, I think he realizes now how badly he botched the case. And it really hung on the fact that he couldn't get the coroner's report that showed that George Floyd was totally high and died from a drug overdose. And, I've been thinking more about this case too. And I've been thinking about it over the past, 2, 3, 4 years. Happened in 2020. I think Derek Chauvin should have just been kicked off the police force. I don't even think he should have been charged with a misdemeanor. He should have got George Floyd help, but whatever. It was obviously in the training manual. You see cops do this all the time. They put, their knees on the back of people. George Floyd had a history of trying to incite his own drug overdoses right when he was about to be arrested. And he probably has a lot of PTSD from what he's been through. And so that's why he's done this. And I'm not trying to lessen what happened to George Floyd, but at the same time, I think the overreaction here, this mob mentality against Derek Chauvin is really bad. It's bad for society. And again, I'm not I'm not out here defending cops. I have a healthy respect, I think, for some cops, but I think a lot of cops deliberately violate constitutional rights and basic stuff. And now they're being weaponized against regular law-abiding citizens who have jobs, who have careers, who are educated, not people like George Floyd. And again, I think, George Floyd seemed like a nice person. There were a lot of videos. His brother seemed like a nice person, Philomeus Floyd, who got up there. And there's been a lot of jokes made about, his name being Felony Floyd, but that's the Floyd family. And yeah, I mean, if someone's in need, get them help. Get them paramedics. But at the same time, now they've destroyed 2 lives. So does that also make it right? I don't know. Anyways, let's listen to the end of this.
Unsupervised, but he was in there supposedly unsupervised.
Erickson's just sounds like a complete dupe.
And another inmate with an improvised knife attacked him from behind and stabbed him.
Plus, he's not articulate. I'm surprised he's even an attorney.
22 times.
I almost don't want to watch this on Tucker Carlson because Gregory Erickson is such a bad person to listen to, but I have to because I'm kind of curious if he has any other details. And this is typical malpractice laden attorney level misconduct. He should have immediately went down to Tucson, figured out what was going on. It's not like he doesn't have the money. Okay, I pulled this up. We had talked a little bit about trad wives and the white supremacists who love them is the title of this particular YouTube video. We didn't talk about how that relates to white supremacists, but it's kind of funny that these two are kind of like put together here in this title. Okay, well, 29,000 likes, 400,000 views, 2,000 comments. Very, very curious to watch this. But before we do, I want to take a video from my anonymous source here. Provided me with a little bit of Vivek impersonation comedy.
So I'm here right outside of CNN. We're about to do our interview.
So if this guy can fool CNN, what does it tell you about CNN? And some of the facts that they're trying to report on and present to you.
With Dana Bash.
Now, would he fool me if he tried to present himself as Vivek Ramaswamy? No. It's pretty clear he isn't.
I have a 6:15 with Dana Bash. Dana Bash? Yeah. This is Vivek Ramaswamy, CNN. Oh, that's over there. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. What was your name? David. Vivek, nice to meet you. Thank you. Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very nice to meet you. Of course. Absolutely. Let's get this picture. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course, man. All right. How do you want to do this? Shaking hands, okay. Perfect. All right. Thank you, brother.
Okay, so he didn't fool CNN technically, but some security guard in the front desk, I don't know. Was that the wrong building though?
It's awesome. Do good.
Maybe that was the wrong building. I don't know. Okay, let's just play a little bit of this and we'll close the stream down.
Do you remember what happened on June 17th, 2015? I was 16 years old. I had just begun dating a boy I had a crush on. I was traveling the world, or really a small town in New York, with a friend I had. Kind of the point.
So this is a black woman's perspective. Her name is Shanspeare, on what a trad wife is and why apparently she is characterizing men who like trad wives, traditional wives, as white supremacists. What a crazy concoction.
Have to be an expert with bite sellers. I just tell them what I like and they will.
It's true though that a lot of these women, these women who vote all Democrat, are nanny mommies living at home drinking wine like this. It's funny though that she's got this sort of green hair.
And in speaking to Sayward Darby, stated that the key to getting white women.
Wow, I'm just kind of surprised though that she has so many likes on this. Maybe she's advertising the video or something. Trad wives are so funny because they're like, let women go back to tending the home like they used to instead of working. Like women haven't been in the workforce since forever. It's only now that economic instability has gotten so bad it's touching upper middle class white suburbia. They're like, what happened to living off of one income alone? That's been a conversation forever. People just choose to ignore it. Also, domestic labor is work, unpaid, undervalued work. Didn't ask. Plus, Shan steals my content for money and views. This is spot on. Statistically speaking, the working class is colonized women. Are you serious? Are you fucking serious? So if a woman works, she's a colonized woman? Are you kidding me? Oh my god. What drugs are these people taking? Okay, one last video going back to our Trump Maine ballot prohibition issue, rather.
So I'm here right outside of
No,
CNN.
it's not that
We're
one.
about
Fuck. I'm getting tired, aren't I? This link. This link.
Breaking news tonight out of Maine, where a move by the Secretary of State has made Maine the first state to officially remove Donald Trump from the ballot on 14th Amendment grounds. In a ruling just moments ago, Secretary of State Sheena Bellows writes, quote, specifically, I find that the declaration on his consent form is false because he is not qualified to hold office of the president under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Bellows added, I conclude that the record establishes that Mr. Trump, over the course of silly action to stop it. This now comes a day after Colorado's Republican review of the Colorado ruling by the 6 Colorado voters.
I think they're just trying to waste as much GOP money as they possibly can.
Who bought the lawsuit to bar Trump from the ballot in the first place. Joining me now is Colorado Secretary of State Jenna Griswold. So glad to have
Childless Jenna Griswold.
you here. Before we even talk about your state, let's try and unpack some of this breaking news out of Maine. What is your reaction to this move and what it means for the future of all of these 14th Amendment challenges?
Well, good evening. Thank you for having me on. And honestly, I think...
Wow, doesn't she look different? Every time she goes and does one of these interviews, it seems like something's significantly different with her face. So she's got these like bulby, very focused eyes at times. Here she doesn't. It's almost like she's wearing eyeshadow. And then her face seems more rounded. It's very strange. I don't know. Maybe she's using some sort of filter on her webcam here. But she looks dramatically different. Her eyes, I think, they're less intense. Usually when she's in these interviews, she's like hitting these talking points one after another. And she's got them written down. And you can see her like kind of vaguely looking off screen like she's reading a teleprompter. Maybe she has an iPad set up that's using some of this teleprompter software so she can read things really quickly. But here, her eyes are not as intense, and I wonder why that is.
It's great that Sheena Bellows, the Secretary of State of Maine, followed the Colorado
I think it's great that
Supreme Court in deciding that Donald Trump is...
Doesn't she kind of speak like a robot, though? I know that I get this, too. That I kind of speak in the same range, and that I don't, change up my tune a little bit, but I have received that sort of feedback before. But Jenna Griswold, very robotic way of going about this. And it's unusual for a woman.
Disqualified from the ballot. Look, it's very clear that Donald.
Look, it's very clear. And then she'll say look as a transition phase, and then she'll kind of go into more of an aggressive rhetoric, and you can see her face kind of like squinch up.
Donald Trump engaged in an insurrection.
And then she does like very vocal oral articulation where she moves her lips and you can see her smile completely.
It is also very clear the language in the Constitution, which says that.
No, that's not true. And she's just lying to you. The language is very clear that the conditions present in the Constitution do not apply to the presidency.
If someone swears to uphold the Constitution and then engages in.
She's not upholding the Constitution. She's eliminating your First Amendment rights in Colorado.
Insurrection, they cannot be placed in office again. So I do think the Secretary of State.
She is making the decision for you. And I know that Colorado, she put Trump back on the ballot. I know that. But she has made the decision that, what did she just say? Hold on, let me, 222. Let's just back this up.
Insurrection, they cannot be placed in office again.
They cannot be placed in office again, is what she said. And you can see her face kind of go pale a little bit. And she seems kind of vulnerable, or it's almost like an expression of guilt. Like she knows what she's saying is wrong and what she's doing is wrong. She doesn't get to make the choice whether Trump is, quote, placed in office again. That's not her role in society. She doesn't get to make that choice for anyone in Colorado, nor does she get to make that choice for anyone around the country.
So I do think the Secretary of State of Maine did the right thing.
She is a megalomaniac. I bet you she's the kind of woman who, if you were married to her, wants you to be like very strong in the house and would get really pissed if you're not alpha in the house, and claim that that's somehow like a traditional relationship. Meanwhile, she's working at the Secretary of State's office and usurping as much control from society as she possibly can. It's a very weird, it's almost like, so let's say like this was the 1950s or 60s, and maybe she wasn't Secretary of State in Colorado. Maybe she was just married and she was raising a family. She could have this kind of control over a family, over a household, and this is natural and normal. But it's almost like she's projecting that same level of control that she would naturally have over a family onto her professional office here. And I don't think that she understands, maybe she does, but that this is a public office. You're dealing with millions of people here. These are decisions that you can't make for them.
And in Maine, it is her job to make this decision. She also recognizes that it's very likely it's going to be appealed. And like in Colorado, has put a stay, so a hold on her decision to allow the appellate process to play out.
So,
why? So like after she gets done talking, why does she always make this face? It's so funny to me. She looks lost. And people say this about me too, you know, like I have an expressionless face at times, so I get it. But I'm not talking about myself here, because I do look like a dweeb occasionally. But it's so strange. She makes this like weird face after she finishes these statements, and I'm just not sure exactly what this means. It's not guilt. It's almost like I'm naive and I know I'm doing something wrong. It's almost like she's caught with her hand in the cookie jar.
Well, I'd like to ask you, you know, we're expecting...
And the face is almost like you want to say, hey, Jenna, we love you. You're doing, you're making a mistake here. Do the right thing kind of thing. That's kind of what you want to say to her.
Say that.
If you were like her parent or something.
Donald Trump has yet to file an appeal in front of the Supreme Court regarding the Colorado case. I should not presume. Do you expect that he will, number one? And do you have any sense what he may put as the issues in front of the court if he does file an appeal?
Donald Trump's lawyers have indicated they'll file something, whether that's their own appeal or joining the appeal already filed, I cannot say. And if they continue to follow...
Someone should make a video that takes clips of Jenna Griswold speaking and then splices them into those vacation movies with Chevy Chase. Because in that movie, Chevy Chase's last name was Griswold.
The argument they followed in the lower courts, I'm sure he'll want to contest the fact that two courts now have decided that he engaged in insurrection. Whether or not he's on the ballot, I think there's a couple things that are really important. Number one, that the United States Supreme Court considers the urgency of the time and acts quickly.
I think people should really understand how much money has been given to Jenna Griswold and Democrats in general, especially in Colorado, to pay for these policies and these decisions. And whether this is from, everybody says it's maybe like George Soros or something, but people need to understand, and most of the funding that George Soros has is taxpayer dollars anyways that are just being laundered. But, people need to understand that she's basically a mouthpiece for someone like George Soros, if not George Soros himself, by making these decisions to keep Trump off the ballot.
Whether that means denying review of the case or making decisions. But number two, whether he's on the ballot or not, he is a danger to this country. And we are only here because he tried to steal...
Okay. The danger to the okay. Why? Because she claims that Trump tried to steal the 2020 election because of January 6th.
Presidency from the American people in 2020.
How
God, I just love this look that she's got. I mean, I don't know. It's just, I love it. But she's childless.
Do you think the Supreme Court actually weighing in on this issue is? Because without clear...
Here's a real question that this dude should ask. He should be like, hey, Jenna, why are you childless? And then we can go into some analysis on exactly why that is. Maybe Jenna will say, hey, I'm infertile, or I'm just a really difficult bitch to deal with.
Direction from the court, it seems like
she should be having children.
Could be headed to a space where come election day, he's on the ballot in some states and not on in others, which could be chaotic for a number of different reasons beyond simply being unprecedented. So are you looking forward in a way to the Supreme Court getting involved?
I'm looking forward to certainty.
She's going to get her ass smacked down by the U.S. Supreme Court in the decision that they lay down. I am 99.9% sure of it.
Job as Secretary of State is to make sure
it would be a real coup if the Supreme Court doesn't smack her down and really criticize her in that decision.
That Coloradans have great elections, Republicans, Democrats, and unaffiliateds alike. And I have to certify who will be on the ballot next week, Friday, for the presidential primary. So we are really urging the court to act quickly. In whether that means that they decide
God, she's so hot.
Not to review or they do review the case, well, that's up to them. But I also agree with Secretary Bellows in Maine and the Colorado Supreme Court. They've gotten it right. Donald Trump engaged in an insurrection, and because of that...
Here goes the intense eyes. Right here.
He should be disqualified by the Constitution.
The fish eyes. The fish eyes come out.
From appearing on any ballot or serving as president again.
God, I just... Whew. All right. Let's read some comments, and then we'll call it a night. We're getting kind of late here, aren't we? I'm just going to check Rumble here quickly. Check YouTube. Okay, so now they're contrasting this or comparing it to Maine. People, of course, it's a woman named Anne Marie Parker who says, "Time for the rest of the country to follow." And then a dude responds with chicken brain. Here's a comment by Joannan. Quote, "As Maine goes, so goes the country. But I'm sure that Susan Collins, who's a senator from Maine, still thinks that he's learned his lesson." Shaking my head. Is that you, Joe? Susan Collins says, quote, "Oh dear, Putin is not giving me my Christmas bonus if I allow this to happen. Grips pearls." 6 replies. Ha 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 ha. Tube 95759 says, "Justice must be served." K2 Tech says, "More 14th Amendment, please." Texas Boomslang says, "I feel like that both Trump and the media are doing their best to keep each other relevant." Well, that's true. I think, the media needs Trump in one way or another to keep ratings high, and CNN's ratings probably have never been higher now that some of these ballot challenges have come through and more people are just kind of like using these as derived content like I am using on live streams or retweeting them, and they tune in just to kind of see this zealous, over exaggerated commentary that is incorrect in many ways, but also to kind of be able to get or gather or capture some sentiment analysis like I am doing here in this line of comments. And it is difficult for me because I'm running the stream and I'm not really able to get full straight on commentary because I'm constantly trying to multitask here, and sometimes I miss things and then run the stream. And it's much easier, for example, right now where I'm just able to give you a stream of consciousness, and it is difficult. That's the major difference between amateur live streamers like me, and then I'm constantly not really thinking about the things I say and trying to sort of operate the content that I'm showing, because I have to show the content, right? I have to provide evidence of what I'm talking about. I can't just provide hearsay or arguments. So we have Colorado, we have Maine, both Democrat states, doing this to President Trump, doing this to half the country. And you have all these women who are totally out of touch with this country, making positive, supportive comments about both Jenna Griswold and Maine. These are all like people in Maine, apparently. Yeah, this is actually a pretty good comment by Schmacky Dude Ron. If I haven't read the second part here, but the first part seems to be accurate, which is that every Secretary of State in these states can basically hack democracy by making unilateral decisions for everyone in the state to take certain candidates off the ballot. And this is really a targeted sort of prosecution scheme, if anything. Okay, so the second part I don't agree on. I think this guy is kind of a troll. Okay, yep, yeah. Good job, Maine. Yay. Can I move to Maine? Can I be a little bitch? Yay, yeah. Oh, great job, Maine. It's all women, all women. Minnesota and Michigan will prevail in keeping him off the general election ballot. There is some argument that because a primary ballot is a choice of a political party, it has no immediate need for keeping him off that ballot. Now, this is an interesting comment. If a party wants to choose an unelectable candidate, why stop them? Now, these are primary ballots. It's not the general election ballot. That's an interesting distinction that someone who, is not super familiar with electoral politics like me didn't quite pick up on. And that's, I think, a key distinction here, because I think they're setting the stage then to take, obviously, Trump off the general election ballot by doing this. And this is going to be something that's argued and appealed up to the Supreme Court repeatedly. And this is another thing where, you really need the resources and the support of a major political party to fight all these battles. Because even if you're Trump and you have money to defend against this lawfare, it's just so overwhelming. And thank God the GOP is stepping up to some degree to actually defend against this. But the Supreme Court really needs, I think, to set some rules here to just swat all this crap away. And make sure that we can't be ruled by these mobs who want these Secretary of States to hack the way that our elections are run. Talk about election interference. All right. I will be back tomorrow morning. And we will talk about a few of these issues. If anybody's on Rumble and wants to live chat right now, I encourage you to do so. Let me see if there's just one other quick thing. Let me just do this quick. Okay, we have this actually. This is a good way to close the stream out too. Where's the audio?
That I am all in on making sure that we tell the story.
Okay. This is a tweet by Dom Lucre. Developing Hillary Clinton wants you to know that she is a dandelion that wants to speak about climate change. What strikes me here is that Hillary is holding on to this railing and does not look particularly healthy. In fact, I would say that this is probably the worst I've seen Hillary Clinton in a long time, health-wise.
Hi, I'm Hillary Clinton, and I'm a dandelion. And that means that I am all in on making sure that we tell the story of climate change and what it's going to do to our lives if we don't act now.
Okay, so they're persecuting Trump, but she wants you to talk about climate change while she's hanging on to a railing because she doesn't have enough physical strength to stand up.
Hi, I'm Hillary
And she looks really old, doesn't she?
Clinton, and I'm a dandelion. And that means that I am all in on making sure.
You see that little arm pump she did right there when she said, I'm all in? Not much strength behind that. She's clearly very weak physically.
that we tell the story of climate change and what it's going to do to our lives if we don't act now.
Her eyes seem weird too at the very end here. She's like extremely bug-eyed, just like Jenna Griswold, staring intensely. Weird. All right, well, again, I'll see you tomorrow morning. I want to do some more sentiment analysis on the Maine decision and find some good tweets on X to talk about it, as well as any of the other news that comes forward. I think I'm going to start preparing for the Epstein list, the redacted list that's going to be released on January 1st. And we'll prep some material to potentially predict who might actually be on that list. Now, it's well known that a lot of those names have already been released, but some of the names that haven't really been highly investigated, Bill Richards, one who just died recently, the former Clinton cabinet official. I think he was the Secretary of Energy. Could be wrong, forget. He was the governor of New Mexico after Clinton left office. I think he's on that list. That's kind of well known. But we want flight log evidence and stuff like that. But it would be interesting, I think, to speculate on who else, and then decide, compare whether or not we were actually correct, whether I was correct. So let me do some digging. See you tomorrow morning. I'm thinking probably around 10, but yeah. Let me find my closing slide. You guys have a great weekend, by the way. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for watching Command HQ with Brooke and Agent X. We'll see you next time.